3 spine-chilling true horror stories from summer nights. Sinister secrets revealed in the dark. The cicadas buzzed in a frenzied symphony, punctuating the thick summer air as Laura wiped down the countertop of the diner, her weary eyes fighting sleep. The clashing of plates echoed in the empty space, growing louder, a reminder of the hours yet to come. Outside, the night felt alive, crawling with shadows that seemed to twist and dance, igniting every primal fear buried deep within her. The diner's neon lights flickered ominously, casting eerie patterns that whispered secrets from the dark. Upstairs, Laura's young daughter, Emily, slept restlessly. The thought made Laura's heart clench. This quiet, sleepy town felt far from safe. Just then, rustling noises jolted her attention. She paused, straining to hear over the hum of the refrigerator. Thumps reverberated through the stillness, nonchalant echoes that made the hair on the back of her neck stand on end. It was too late for customers. Something unknown prowled in the shadows. Shaking off the dread, she convinced herself it was just her imagination. Exhaustion played tricks on the mind until a gut-wrenching horror unveiled itself. She crept upstairs, every creak of the wooden steps echoing her tension. As she rounded the corner to Emily's room, her breath hitched. There, on the floor, lay Emily's prized stuffed rabbit, shredded, its fluffy bits strung across the hardwood like remnants of a nightmare. And then the back door that never, ever remained unlocked swung ajar. Fear flooded Laura's veins, freezing her momentarily. Something wicked lurked in her familiar suburban sanctuary, and she needed to act fast. Rushing towards the door, she peered into the enveloping darkness, heart pounding. Who could be out there? A life tangled in trust began to unravel at her feet. She thought of cursing neighbors, Mrs. Whitaker with her too-wide smile, or Mr. Sanders, the teacher whose nightly walks seemed innocent but felt everything but. With dread settling heavily in her stomach, she picked up her phone. "I need help," she gasped. The voice on the line was dismissive, urging her to calm down. What were the odds? But whispers of unsolved disappearances flickered through her mind like the neon sign blinking above. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With fear gnawing at her heart, she opened the door to find Mrs. Whitaker standing there, her smile sickly sweet, eyes like dark voids. "Just checking in, dear," she chirped, but the chill in her voice sliced through the warm night like a knife. Laura's pulse raced, the pieces falling precariously into place, the friendly veneer of her town masking something sinister. A shiver coursed through her as she sensed incomplete truths hiding behind smiles. Laura knew to protect Emily, she must face the horrors living beyond the fluorescent lights of the diner, lurking in their home, among neighbors who shouldn't be trusted. Time slipped away, drawing her closer to an unknown terror she could not escape, and dawn was not far behind. What horrific connections awaited her as the shadows grew? Would she uncover the secrets knotting her tangled fate before it was too late? Laura's heart raced as she stared into the hollow eyes of Mrs. Whitaker. The warmth of the summer night felt like ice against her skin. I'm fine," she stammered, desperately wishing the words were true. But the way Mrs. Whitaker's smile wavered told her otherwise. "Just checking on Emily," Mrs. Whitaker continued, stepping closer, the sweet scent of lavender mixed with something foul trailing in her wake. Laura instinctively moved back, blocking the doorway to protect her daughter. "I brought her a little gift." In the woman's hand, a tattered cloth sack dangled, almost empty except for an embroidered blue ribbon. Something about it sent a chill down Laura's spine. "Oh, that's okay. She's sleeping," Laura said, her voice trembling as she tightened her grip on the doorknob. "Are you sure?" Mrs. Whitaker leaned in, a predatory gleam in her eye. "Children love surprises. Images of what had been left in Emily's room danced in Laura's mind: the shredded rabbit, the messy fibers strewn like breadcrumbs in a sinister tale. How could she explain the chaos lurking beneath her neighbor's painted smile? Really, now isn't the best time, Laura managed to say, edging backward. But Mrs. Whittaker didn't relent. The smile slowly twisted into something unsettling. Oh dear, this is merely an innocent gesture. You wouldn't want to offend me. The tone dripped with something dangerous. It ignited her instincts. She recognized that glaze of vulnerability that masked a much darker intent. Since when do you bring gifts to children at this hour? Laura shot back, her voice boldly defying the terror wrapping around her heart. But she barely recognized her own courage. It seemed like desperation more than strength, a final plea for safety. Fear can make us do strange things. Mrs. Whittaker's voice sank to a murmur. Trust is a fragile thing, wouldn't you say? That shattered Laura's resolve. She pushed past the woman, slamming the door shut, locking it with a tremulous click. She barely breathed as she turned, wishing she could shake the feeling of being watched. Upstairs, the shadows seemed deeper, the night thicker as she pulled Emily's door closed. A soft whimper fell from her daughter's lips in her sleep. Mommy Laura rushed to her side, brushing the damp hair from Emily's forehead. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. But deep within, she felt an insatiable dread. Suddenly the house groaned. The sound, as if coming from within its very bones, pulled Laura's attention. Thuds drifted down the hallway, echoing with dark promise. Beneath her skin, goosebumps prickled, screaming that she was not alone. The noise, was it the house settling or something more sinister? Panic surged, but she forced herself to move. Laura crept toward the staircase, each step a careful whisper as the echoes grew louder, wrapping around her like shadows. As she reached the bottom, a shuffling sound erupted from the kitchen, the kind that shouldn't belong in the silence of a late summer night. She peered around the corner, blood rushing in her ears. The dim glow from the diner's neon sign bled through the glass, illuminating the figure hunched over the counter. Not Mrs. Whittaker, but someone else. A shadow twisted with menacing intent. "Who's there?" Laura called, her voice barely a whisper. The stillness responded with a tension so thick she could almost choke on it. The figure froze, slowly turning. "Just a visitor," it rasped, an unfamiliar voice that made her blood run cold. Laura's heart thundered as she fumbled for her phone, thoughts of Emily blurring into frantic whispers. Should she run for her life? Should she stay? But before she could process, the figure took a lurching step forward, ready to cross a line from which there was no return. What horrors demanded to spill into her home next? Would she be able to protect her daughter? Or would they both become unwilling players in a game far darker than even the night could conceal? The figure loomed larger in the dim light, an outline obscured by shadows, a crooked grin twisting its features. The air was thick with something rancid, something that curled in Laura's stomach. A grimace crossed her face as she recoiled, her mind racing with thoughts of escape. "Stay back," she shouted, her voice stronger than she felt. With trembling hands, Laura raised her phone, the screen's light flickering in the gloom. "I won't hurt you," the figure murmured, its voice grating like nails on a blackboard, sending shivers racing down her spine. "Just here for a little chat." Laura's instincts kicked in. She needed a weapon, a knife from the kitchen, anything she could use to defend her daughter. She turned on her heel, but just as she did, a noise like a sickening laugh twisted through the air. It wrapped around her, pulling her back, binding her in place. "Where do you think you're going?" The figure took another step forward, shadows clinging to its form like a moth to flame. "Leave us alone," Laura screamed, but the words felt weak against the monstrous presence before her. She could feel her heart racing, thumping like a war drum. "Emily." She glanced over her shoulder, desperate to ensure her daughter was still asleep, still safe. The sight of Emily's innocent face brought life back to her, a spark igniting deep within. Before she could dash toward the kitchen, the figure dropped low, hitting the floor with a sickening thud. Laura's heart sank, panic bubbling over. She realized there was not an ounce of humanity left in this thing. "Come play with me," it croaked, grinning wider, exposing teeth too sharp and too jagged. "I know where the real fun is." Every instinct screamed for her to flee, but every part of her screamed to protect Emily. What if this thing had already set its sights on her daughter? "Stay back," Laura shouted again, stepping closer to the figure, desperate to hold her ground. The shadows danced around her like malicious spirits. "You're not welcome here." The figure's laughter echoed again, louder this time, reverberating through the walls. "I don't need an invitation, and you have something I want." "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling, eyes darting to the hall where she could still see the faint outline of Emily's bedroom door. "Precious little Emily," the figure hissed, dragging out her daughter's name like a wicked spell. "I've come to collect her." With adrenaline surging through her veins, Laura lunged toward the kitchen, heart pounding, desperate to get a weapon, desperate to protect her only light in this encroaching darkness. As she stumbled behind the counter, her fingers fumbled against cold metal. The knife! She gripped it tightly, her breath hitching in her throat. "Where are you hiding?" the monster taunted, the voice slithering through the air like a snake hunting its prey. She could hear the figure approaching, shuffling, getting closer. "Not so brave now, are you?" Laura's heart was on fire as she peeked around the edge of the counter, ready to fight. She had to buy time. "What do you want with her?" she shouted, clutching the knife tightly in her shaking hand. The shadow paused, tilting its head as if considering her words. "The same thing you want: a chance to survive in this world. But you want to protect her. You can't." As the figure lunged forward, Laura braced herself. Would she rise to the horrible challenge or fall into the madness that threatened to swallow her whole? But as she prepared to face it, a loud crash erupted from upstairs, pulling her attention away. A scream, a terrifying, familiar scream. "Emily! Emily!" In that instant, the threat before her became secondary. She bolted from the kitchen, leaving the figure momentarily stunned. What had happened to her daughter? In that desperate split second, she rushed up the stairs, knowing full well that something unspeakable awaited her. Could she reach Emily in time? Would she find her child? Or was this a cruel game with no winners? The sound of her daughter's scream tore through Laura like razor wire, sharp and fierce. Each step up the stairs felt like a fetched promise of doom, a countdown to horrors she couldn't yet see. The darkness stretched around her as if alive, breathing, eager to swallow her whole. "Emily!" she called again, her voice strained, desperation clawing at her throat. An echo bounced back, mocking her hope as she reached the top of the staircase. The hallway stretched out before her, flooded with an eerie, flickering light from Emily's bedroom. Shadows darted in and out, twisting and dancing like marionettes jerked by invisible strings. Her heart pounded as she crept toward the door. Each creak of the floorboards felt like an alarm bell announcing her arrival. She pressed her ear against the wood, and for a brief second, silence enveloped her. But then "Help me!" Emily's voice seeped through the crack beneath the door, barely a whisper, swallowed by the thick air. Laura's heart raced at the sound of her daughter's fear, a cold sweat breaking out on her brow. She pushed the door open slowly, the hinges moaning in protest. The sight before her froze her to the core. The room was turned upside down. Toys scattered like victims across the floor, the bed sheets tossed aside. But it was the shadowy figure standing over her daughter that sent a chill down her spine. "Let her go!" Laura screamed, the knife glinting in her trembling fist. The figure turned, revealing a face so grotesque it didn't seem human. The mouth split open into a wide, gaping grin, revealing teeth that sparkled like shattered glass in the dim light. "She has something I need," it hissed, eyeing Laura with a predatory hunger. The dark tendrils curling off its body seemed to reach for Emily, ready to snatch her away. "Get away from her!" With every ounce of strength, Laura surged forward, knife raised high, but the figure simply laughed. It was a high, shrill sound, like the cackling of madmen echoed off the walls. "Do you really think you can protect her?" Time stopped as the words slithered through the air. Watching the creature, she felt a bone-deep realization creeping in. This thing wasn't just after her daughter. It fed off pain, despair, the very essence of fear. In a bold rush, Laura lunged at the entity, her heart a roaring blaze, raw instinct fueling her movements. She plunged the knife forward into the mass of darkness, feeling a strange resistance as if she was cutting through fog. The figure shrieked, a hideous sound that clawed at her ears. "You think you can stop me?" But the creature recoiled, and for a moment, she felt hope. The tension in the air shifted. Maybe, just maybe, she could save Emily. "Emily, come here. Get away from it," she yelled, eyes blazing with fury and determination. But Emily stood frozen, eyes wide, staring at the shadow that had entranced her. "Mommy, it said it can help me." "What?" Panic exploded within Laura. "No, it's lying. Come to me." The figure chuckled, its eyes narrowing, delight dancing in its gaze. "What is wrong, Laura? Doesn't your darling trust you? She knows where the real power lies." Laura's heart lurched. Emily's silence dragged her deeper into the abyss of despair. She had to act fast. If she let this thing control her daughter, they would both be lost in darkness. With a fierce snarl, Laura charged again. "Emily, trust me. We can escape together." But as she lunged forward, the atmosphere thickened, the figure's laughter drowning out her calls. In one horrendous movement, it swelled, its mass shifting toward Emily with a menacing speed. "Join me," it crooned, reaching for her daughter. No, Laura was upon them, fury boiling as she brandished the knife. The flash of silver in the dim light surged like a wild river, but the figure twisted, encircling itself around Emily. In that split second, something shattered inside Laura. Time felt warped, stretched agonizingly thin as she struggled against the dark. There was no more room for retreat. But just as her knife pierced the shadow, a blinding light erupted, engulfing everything. What had she done? As the shadows cracked and shattered like glass, the real question loomed above them. Would Laura and Emily emerge from this darkness, or was it merely the beginning of an unimaginable horror? Light surged around them, searing away the darkness. Laura felt a heat that curled her skin. She could barely breathe. Instinctively, she shut her eyes tight, heart racing. Flashes of color danced under her lids, bright like a summer day, yet twisted, like a carnival gone wrong. "Mommy?" Emily's voice broke through the chaos, soft and uncertain. Laura snapped her eyes open. They were no longer in her daughter's bedroom. A field stretched before them, but not a field you'd expect. It was vast, desolate, littered with remnants of despair, broken dolls, torn photographs, and crumpled teddy bears. Each object whispered secrets in the language of sorrow. "Where are we?" Laura wondered aloud, panic rippling down her spine. A nauseating unease settled deep within her chest. "I don't know," Emily replied, her voice trembling. From the edges of the horizon, shapes emerged, shifting and writhing. Faces without form, expressions lost in the void of their presence. Shadows of memories. Things Laura could almost remember but couldn't quite grasp. "Stay close, Em," Laura commanded, gripping her daughter's hand like a lifeline, the knife still clutched in her other. Feeling the weight of the weapon, a reality began to crack open in her mind. Had her desperation unleashed this hell? The spectral figures drew nearer, their whispers ringing in her ears, fragments of mournful cries blending together. "Leave us be," they breathed like a gust of wind, chilling her even to the bone. Suddenly, Emily pointed into the distance. "Look!" A flicker of light caught Laura's attention. A figure moved through the chaos, somehow more corporeal than the shadows surrounding them. She squinted, taking a step forward. Relief threatened to drown her as she realized it looked like a friend, someone she had known for years. "Katie!" she gasped. Katie was running, her face twisted in fear. "Laura, you shouldn't be here. It's not safe." "Where are we?" Laura shouted, feeling the ground tremble beneath her. Katie's eyes flicked to the expanding shadows, terror lining her features. "It traps you in your own nightmare. You have to, but before she could finish, the shadows surged forward, hungry and relentless. They enveloped Katie, the light around her snuffed out like a candle in a tempest. No! Laura screamed, pulling Emily closer. The shadows swirled around them, their whispers growing deafening, filled with panic, despair, and the stench of fear. "Mommy, I'm scared," Emily whimpered. "We'll get out. I promise." Laura clenched her teeth, staring into the swirling darkness. "We have to fight." The knife trembled in her hands, its tip reflecting the few embers of light left in this dread-filled void. Laura suddenly realized she could fight back. If this was a nightmare born from despair, maybe hope was a weapon too. "Show me," Laura yelled into the ominous haze. "Reveal yourself." From the depths, eyes glinted, cold and mocking. "You think you can conquer me?" A voice slithered through the air like a serpent, chilling Laura's blood. "Yes," she shot back, courage swelling. But the shadows began to close in, their forms shifting, clawing at the edges of her sanity. Emily's small body trembled beside her, and Laura's heart clenched. Despair gnawed at her edges. "Mommy," her daughter murmured, "what if we can't wake up?" Laura glanced down at Emily, dread settling in her bones. What if their escape was just an illusion? Was this nightmare their new reality? "Stay with me, Em. Whatever happens, we face it together." The shadows recoiled for a moment but surged again, eager to swallow them whole. "Mommy!" With that cry, a surge of energy shot through Laura, and she knew they had to stand their ground, even as the darkness threatened to engulf them both once more. Was it too late to reclaim their lives? What would they become if they lost this fight? The dark shadows loomed ever closer, a suffocating shroud. What fate awaited them in this nightmare? The shadows pressed in, a wave of black clawing at their ankles. Laura could feel the chill creeping along her spine, numbing her resolve. But as she held onto Emily, something ignited within her, a flicker of defiance. "Stay behind me," she shouted, gripping the knife tighter, its cold metal biting into her palm. "Mommy, trust me. Just hold on." The whispers intensified, a cacophony that scraped against her sanity. "You're too weak, you'll never escape," the swirling shadows mocked her, voices rising like a thunderstorm overhead. Laura's heart raced as she focused on the horror surrounding them. She could see faces now, some familiar, others hauntingly strange. They gazed at her from the depths, pleading and accusing all at once. An avalanche of memories crashed into her mind. People she had lost, moments of regret. It was suffocating. "No!" she screamed, forcing the thoughts away. "Fight back." Emily's small voice cut through the noise. "Don't let them take you. They're just shadows," Laura said, her voice growing steadier. "They can't hurt us if we don't let them." With a surge fueled by desperation, she thrust the knife forward, as if aiming it at the darkness itself. "I'm not afraid of you." It felt like casting a spell, unraveling something as she defied the creeping dread. For a moment, the shadows recoiled, as if her bravery was some corrosive light. "Foolish girl, do you think you can banish us?" "Yes," Laura shouted, determination crystallizing into anger. "You're nothing but echoes of fear. You don't belong here." The darkness hesitated, swirling hesitantly. That flicker of light she had spotted earlier began to pulse, growing brighter. From the edge of the looming shadows, a thin beam of hope reached out like a star piercing through the night. "Come on," Laura urged Emily, pulling her forward. "We have to make it to the light." They ran. Every step was a battle against a tide of despair. The shadows clawed at them, hissing as they passed. "You'll never escape your sins. They will always find you. Liar," Laura shouted back, refusing to look back. Her blood pounded in her ears, a relentless drum urging her forward. Emily's tiny hand felt frail in hers, but the warmth radiating from her daughter was undeniable. Sparked a fire, giving Laura strength. The light grew closer, a beacon in this nightmare. But the dark howled around them, a tempest of anguish, dragging at their heels. "You cannot run from what you are." They were almost there, just a few more steps. Laura felt the world constrict around them as the shadows closed in, attempting to snuff out their hope. "Emily, no matter what, don't let go of my hand," she yelled. Sensing the pressure building, a rush of wind howled, almost human in its despair. It rattled her bones, lifting her hair like a specter's touch. Laura felt her body tremble, the weight of something heavy enveloping her mind. But she pushed through. "Mommy!" Emily's voice cut through the tempest, pure fear thrumming. "I've got you." With one final lunge, Laura drove the knife forward, piercing the very essence of the shadows. In her mind, she envisioned them dissolving into nothingness, every haunting voice silenced. As the blade made contact, blinding light erupted around them, cascaded over Laura and Emily, consuming the dark. The shadows screamed, a sound twisted in horror and rage, and suddenly silence. They were standing at the threshold of a new space, a fragile peace. But as Laura took a breath, sensing the air was different, something caught her attention. "Mommy, what if it isn't over?" Emily's voice trembled again, full of something else, something deeper. Laura felt a shiver run through her. What if the darkness had merely withdrawn? What if it lurked just out of view, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again? She had defeated it, or so it seemed. But a cold dread whispered in her mind, tugging at her very soul. What if this was only the beginning? The ominous question hung between them, heavy like a storm cloud, as they contemplated what lay ahead. The air shimmered around them, alive with anticipation, but a chill clung to Laura's skin. They were in some kind of limbo, a realm separated from the darkness but not entirely free from its grip. Laura scanned the surroundings, an empty expanse stretched before them, the ground shimmering like glass underfoot. It felt surreal, yet the oppressive sense of being watched weighed heavily on her chest. "Mommy, I don't like this place," Emily's voice cracked, tears pooling in her wide, innocent eyes. "We're safe, baby. We won." Laura strained to sound convincing, but doubt shadowed her words. They had faced the darkness, yet here they were still feeling the malevolence lurking just beyond their vision. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled, and a reverberating laugh echoed through the void, a low rumble that made Laura's stomach flip. "Safe? Oh, how naive!" The voice slipped from the shadows like smoke curling in the wind. "Who's there?" Laura shouted, her grip tightening on the knife. It felt heavier now, as if it carried the weight of their past confrontations. "Do you really believe you can escape so easily?" The voice hollowed through her mind, churning her memories. "You've only scratched the surface of your own fears." The shimmering expanse darkened, waves of shadows surging into view, twisting and swirling like frenzied dancers. Faces emerged from the darkness, lost souls calling to her, clawing as they reached out. They weren't merely figments of her past. They were reflections of regret, remorse, all those she had abandoned and all the pain she had suffered. "Emily, close your eyes," Laura yelled, pulling her daughter close, shielding her from the torment. A piercing scream erupted from the dark, growing louder, sharper. "You can't protect her, Laura. She's entwined with the darkness, just as you are." "Shut up," Laura snapped, her heart roaring. They had come too far, fought too hard to let it slip away. "We will never be part of you." The voice twisted in laughter. "But you already are. The shadows feed on your fear, your guilt. You think you've banished me? You've merely pushed me back for now." "No!" Laura screamed again, feeling the ground quiver beneath them as the shadows surged forward like an angry tide. Memories crashed onto her like waves, each moment of sorrow slicing into her resolve. Then, from the very depths of sorrow, a flicker sparked. Emily's tiny hand squeezed hers, warmth shattering the icy grip of despair. "Mommy, we can't let them win." Her resolve was stronger than any darkness surrounding them. Just like that, determination surged through Laura. "You're right, Emily. They are nothing but ghosts of fear. They can't have us." She raised the knife again, eyes narrowing with fierce resolve. With a guttural scream, Laura plunged the knife downward, intent on severing the bond between her and the shadows. But as the blade sought to strike, the ground cracked open beneath them, a chasm yawning wide, the darkness pulling them closer, beckoning like a siren. "Mommy! Hold on, Emily! Don't let go!" As the shadows tried to engulf them, Laura fought with every ounce of strength. The knife glinted, a fierce light against the encroaching darkness. She could almost hear the pulse of their fear, thrumming like a heartbeat driving them to the edge. And then darkness. The ground gave way completely as they plummeted into the abyss, a spiral of shadows swirling around them, laughter echoing in the depths like a haunting refrain. Where did the fall end? The question echoed through Laura's mind as they spiraled into an unknown nightmare. What awaited them in the shadows below? And worse yet, what if the true horror had yet to reveal itself? Laura felt the weight of the knife slip from her fingers as they tumbled through the darkness. The air rushed past them, cold and suffocating, and she grasped for something, anything, to hold on to. Emily's terrified shrieks echoed around her, but the sound was warped, tossed around in the void. Desperation flooded her veins. "Emily!" She managed to yell, but the darkness swallowed her words, amplifying the fear that clawed at her insides. Time stretched in the abyss, each second extending into eternity, and then suddenly everything stopped. They hit something solid, but it wasn't the ground. It was soft and yielding, like the belly of a vast creature. Laura blinked, her eyes adjusting to a sickly illumination. They were surrounded by a surreal landscape dictated by what lay just outside their vision. A twisted forest of gnarled trees whose branches curled like claws against a roiling, foggy sky. "Mommy, where are we?" Emily whimpered, her voice small and trembling. "Shoo!" Laura soothed, desperately scanning their surroundings. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, whispering threats that scratched at the edges of her sanity. She pulled Emily closer, her heart pounding in rhythm with the pulse of the darkness. "Ah, your little adventure has ended, hasn't it?" The voice was slithering, coiling around them like smoke. The shadows took shape, looming figures forming into grotesque misinterpretations of the memories Laura wished to forget. "Welcome to my domain. You thought you escaped, but we linger in your shadows always. No, we're free." Laura screamed, her resolve hardening. She raised the knife she had retrieved in the fall, its blade flickering with a newfound light. "We've faced you before, have you?" It laughed, the sound echoing like iron bells tolling in her mind. "This is only the beginning. Look around, what do you see?" With a frantic sweep of her gaze, Laura studied the twisted branches, the shifting silhouettes. Each tree held a story, perhaps her own. Faces twisted in agony emerged from the bark, their hollow eyes pleading. Memories of forgotten fears seeped into her mind, threatening to drown her in the pain she thought she had overcome. "Mommy!" Emily squeezed her hand again, her voice breaking through the fog of despair. "We have to go." Yes, yes," Laura cried, spurred into action. She fought against the overwhelming wave of fear, taking a step forward, and then another. The knife felt alive in her hand, glowing brighter with every determined stride. "We will not let them win." As her resolve strengthened, the shadows recoiled, shrieking in frustration as she pressed deeper into the twisted forest. The figures screamed words of doubt, memories of anger, pain. Lost, they tried to ensnare her, each voice colliding in a cacophony keen to drag her down. "You don't deserve to be free." She grabbed Emily's hand tightly, pulling her along as they ran through the forest, the branches whipping at them like angry spirits. "Mommy, I can't," Emily cried, stumbling. But Laura's fear fueled her. "Keep going, love. We're almost there." Ahead, a flicker of light appeared, shimmering against the oppressive gloom. It beckoned to them, a promise of safety, freedom. But as they drew closer, a shadow peeled away from the darkness and stepped into their path. A twisted, monstrous version of Laura herself. It grinned with malevolent glee, eyes burning like coal. "You think you can escape that easily?" The doppelganger hissed, body shifting in grotesque mimicking of Laura's own movements. "I am everything you reject, everything you fear." The urge to flee crashed against the weight of dread as Emily gasped. "Mommy, please," but Laura couldn't move. The encounter felt surreal, as if a trap had been woven into the fabric of this realm. Face yourself, the shadow hissed, savoring the torment reflected in Laura's eyes. With a heart-thundering scream of defiance, she raised the knife. You are not me. Yet as she lunged toward the shadow, the light flickering around them grew stronger, distorting, warping the entire landscape. Darkness threatened to swallow them whole once again. What if the fight was just beginning? What if facing the truth would force them deeper into the shadows? An unknown chill raced through her veins. Would they be trapped in this nightmare forever? Or could they conquer the darkness once and for all? Laura lunged at the figure, heart racing, adrenaline surging like a tidal wave. The knife erupted with a blinding light just as the shadow twisted away, a rotting mask of her own failure. Darkness peeled back like layers of peeling skin, exposing the truth beneath. The creature cackled, its mirth echoing in the abysmal void around them. You'll learn, my dear. The past never really dies. It just waits. Hungry for a moment of weakness, Emily clutched her mother's side, shaking with fear. Mommy, it's not true, right? Before Laura could respond, the shadow lunged, darting toward Emily. The blade instinctively raised. Laura shouted, "Get back!" Time slowed as the knife clashed with the shadow, a bright flash illuminating the forest for a heartbeat. It burned with a radiant light, as if purpose and courage transformed it into an unbreakable shield. But the figure merely laughed, a sound that dripped with malice, echoing around them like a funeral dirge. You think you can protect her? It mocked. You only dug deeper into your own despair, into your own fears. She is the perfect bait. With that, the unholy figure twisted and slithered back into the shadows, stealing the light with it. The rushing gloom closed in, oppressive and suffocating. Are you okay? Laura croaked, panic engulfing her. But Emily's eyes were wide, fixing on something behind Laura. Mommy, look. Turning slowly, the realization hit like an icy grip around her heart. From the depths of the forest, dozens of grotesque shadows writhed and twisted, slipping between the gnarled trunks, flooding the space where the light had been. Each face, every agonizing scream they wore, mirrored fragments of her past, her lost dreams, every regret, every betrayal. Stay close, she yelled, pulling Emily tight as they retreated deeper into the forest, the shadows swirling after them, teeth glistening with violent hunger. Each tree whispered her name. Each branch reached out, yearning to pull her in. Mommy, I'm scared, Emily cried, the edges of her voice tearing at Laura's resolve. I know, baby, I know, Laura breathed, glancing back, dread clouding her thoughts. Where was the exit? The flickering light had vanished, leaving only a festering darkness. What if we don't make it? Emily's whisper hung in the air, stark and chilling. Laura's chest tightened. There wasn't room for doubt now. We will make it. But her heart knew the truth. The darkness thrived on fear, and every word it spoke echoed a cruel taunt. It was a predator, lingering just a breath away from consuming them whole. Another scream shattered the air. No, it was a laughter, mocking and gloating. Every step you take, you become more lost, more ensnared by the cycle of despair. The shadows twisted, creating ghastly figures that loomed larger, reaching for them. With no time to waste, Laura gripped the knife, its light flickering dimly now. We have to find the source of the light. I can't lose you, Emily. A path opened up, twisting deeper into the forest, lined with moaning trees alive with torment. What lay ahead could be salvation or doom. Taking a deep breath, clenching Emily's hand, they stumbled forward, deeper into the heartbeat of darkness. But the shadows coiled and whispered, weaving tales of dread that wrapped around Laura's mind like chains. You cannot run from your past, Laura, and just as they plunged into the thick of it, the ground beneath them trembled. Mommy, Emily shouted, as the earth fractured and opened up. What awaited them at the edge of the abyss was unknown, but the shadows surged forward, hungry and relentless. Could the knife still protect them, or was it too late to turn back? As they stood on the brink, heartbeats synchronizing with the sinister calling of the void, One final question loomed larger than the darkness itself. Would facing their fears lead them to freedom or doom? Laura's grip on the knife tightened as the shadows loomed, whispering treachery while pulling at her heart like a nightmare made flesh. The ground beneath them quivered, cracks spreading like webs of fear. "Don't let go of my hand, Emily," she yelled, a desperate anchor against the swirling shadows. Her daughter nodded, eyes wide, filled with a mixture of trust and terror as the shadows closed in. A thunderous voice echoed from all sides. "You cannot escape what lies within." It was the darkness, all-consuming, a beast hungry for their marrow. Each whisper stabbed at Laura's resolve, memories of guilt and regret cutting through her like knives. "No," she shouted, fury igniting in her chest. "You are not my truth." She turned towards the creeping dusk, expression fierce. "We will not be defined by fear." Emily squeezed her hand tighter, sensing the rising tide around them. "Mommy, I'm scared. Stay with me," Laura whispered back, feeling the heat of her daughter's small form against her. That warmth burned brighter than the shadows could extinguish. The knife lingered, a flicker of hope against the onslaught of despair. "Mommy, look," Emily exclaimed, pointing toward the trees. A soft glow curled from the branches above, forming a path that shimmered like moonlight on a still lake. Their heart racing, Laura nodded. "That's our way out." The ground shook beneath their feet, shadows writhing as if in protest, but they surged toward the light, pressing harder against the horde that threatened to envelop them whole. Each step echoed with self-doubt, the shadows whispering memories that haunted her. "You'll never escape your past. It owns you." But Laura shook her head, defiance burning bright. "No, you don't define us." She began to run, knife aloft. "We are better than our fears." Emily matched her pace, her small feet pounding against the ground. As they approached the light, Laura could feel the warmth beginning to untangle the icy grip of despair. "We have to believe," she screamed, adrenaline surging. The wave of shadows surged, clawing and grasping. "You cannot outrun what is inside. Shut up," Laura screamed, spinning to face the darkness. With all her might, she thrust the knife into the shadow's maw. It connected with a jarring force, unleashing a burst of light that erupted like fireworks, scattering the lingering dread. The shadows recoiled, shrieks of pain echoing thunderously through the forest, and Laura felt the pulse of liberation surge through her veins. "Mommy!" Emily cried, joy filling her small voice. "Keep going." They pushed forward, every step fueled by a shared belief that they would conquer this nightmare. Finally, they broke through the tree line, light engulfing them like a welcoming embrace. The shadows shrieked, receding into the darkness that surrounded the clearing, their malevolence now diminished and distant. Laura and Emily emerged into a sun-drenched meadow, the warmth bathing their skin, a sharp contrast to the chilling shadows they had just escaped. The air was sweet, filled with blooming flowers and free from the rancid stench of despair. They stumbled into the open space, breathless, hearts racing, and tears streaming down their cheeks, something that had felt immaterial just moments ago. They were free, for now. "I can't believe we made it, Mommy," Emily breathed, a blush of relief punctuating her voice. Laura knelt beside her, pulling her into an embrace, a safe harbor. "We did it together. You were brave, Em." But even as they shared a moment of peace, Laura felt a whisper of unease nestle in the corners of her mind. The darkness had been chased away, for now. But what if it lay in wait, prowling the edges of their lives where shadows often lingered? "Mommy?" Emily's innocent voice pulled her from her thoughts. "What if it comes back?" As she looked into her daughter's eyes, Laura understood. It was not simply the battle against the darkness that mattered, but the fight for the light, one that she would continue every day. "We won't let it. We'll stand together. One Tiwi?" Laura squeezed Emily's hands tightly, looking deep into those trusting eyes. "No matter what comes, I promise to fight for us." And so, with their hearts aligned against the ever-present shadows, Laura and Emily stepped forward, ready to carve a path into the future filled with hope, strength, and the knowledge that fear would never hold the power to define them again as the sun sank on the horizon. Shadows shrank away, vanquished at the edges of their unwavering spirits. "Let us go home," Laura said, and together they walked into the light, leaving the darkness behind. Now, as we close the final chapter of Laura and Emilia's story, don't forget the power of facing your fears. You need to subscribe now to catch every gripping moment of our next adventures. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and bring more heart-pounding tales to life. I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and theories. And please instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this journey. This is the moment to show your support. Let us light up the darkness together.